Hello everyone, and today will be something more recent, and this is the Jomo Instinct Emerald Green. Now this is a demo set, as you can see here. This is loaned to me by Jaben. They actually let me try out this Instinct IEM itself. So this is my first look, and I will have a first impression, initial look at the IEMs and comparisons, plus some measurements at the back. So just look at the bookmarks below, and if you like this video, do like and subscribe. Other than that, let's not waste time and take a look at the IEM. Now this is the Emerald Green. Once again, this is loaned to me from Jaben. It's a demo set, so it looks pretty good. You can see this is the plate. At first I thought this was a pure metal piece, kind of like the new Instinct, or is it something TI, Impulse, yeah, Impulse TI, right? But no, this one seems to be a design inside and still has an acrylic or some sort of a epoxy or resin plate on top still. It's not like a metal plate here, so something different. Now Jomo like to give these kind of tips where it does insert a little bit deeper and double flange, so it does seal a bit better. But I tried some of them before, and sometimes they are great, sometimes they are kind of weird. So let's take a look at the cables. The cables are actually pretty nice. You see, this is I'm not sure, I think multi-strand braided, right? 4 cables together, and each of them are like internal multi-strands. Very nice. This is a balanced connector as expected. Now this is not a very cheap IEM. In fact, it's pretty expensive at about 3,000 USD. So I expect it to give pretty good stuff. Now if I pull out the connectors, you can see that Jomo went for more of a flat connector, so allow you to use almost any cables. So even the cables themselves do not have any of the protrusions in some of the modern cables. So just note that Jomo cables and Jomo IEMs require the more flathead type of connection, which is pretty okay. Now pulling off the tips, you can see here, this is probably a mid to large size type of bore. There are a few holes here. I see, at least with my eyes here, I see 4, or in fact I see 5 holes here. So they're all bored into the main stem here. And once you put on these ear tips, you notice that actually it goes pretty deep in. So whether it fits well or not really depends on a lot of your ear shape and fitting, because I guess bulk of the fitting to your ear is heavily dependent on this shape itself. Now you can look inside. This is a semi-transparent kind of a case. You can see that they write there Jomo Audio, the logo inside. And then you can see the driver. So now this is, I believe, a 2+6+1, which is 2 bass drivers using dynamics, and then 6 balanced armature drivers, which I believe are the mids, and then 1 PZT, and it looks like the PZT is kind of like the high driver. Exactly, not too sure, but there is a 5-way crossover inside. It's pretty nice really, and you can see all the components you are actually paying for, all inside this small little IEM shell. So that is pretty much it on the close-up of this IEM. I think overall it looks really nice. I thought that this is a metal plate at first, but it isn't. But other than that, it looks pretty good. Everything from the cables to the IEMs. So without wasting time, let's have an initial impression of this IEM itself. So I tried the Instinct Emerald with 3 separate songs. I tried it on Aino Akuruhi by Edo, and I tried it on Ibara by Edo, followed by I also tried it on Heartbeat by Yoasobi. Now I would just want to say that the first impression really is, I would say it's mid-sized soundstage. The soundstage sounds pretty big, not small, it's pretty big, but it's not like humongous. The sound itself is not like light, it's pretty thick if you ask me. A little bit more on the thick side, a little bit more on the low sides. Now when you talk about the low, the bass energy is quite a lot, especially mid-bass. The bass slam is very impactful, right? While still maintaining quite large amount of sub bass. I feel there's a lot of rumble, especially in Aino Akuruhi, a lot of rumble in the sub bass. While in Heartbeat, there's this part where the bass starts kicking in, it does kick in really hard. Here, while Ibara has this constant bass beating, it beats really nice and clean here. Now for the mids wise, I find that they are pushed a little bit forward. It's not like the very laid back sound that sometimes you can hear in Harman tuning. This one just feels a bit more pushed forward. And it is really clear. Though I have to say that quite a good amount of the bass energy and the lower mids energy is present, so it feels very full-bodied and a little bit more thicker side of things. So it doesn't feel like the lightest or clearest, absolute clearest mids ever. And that's because of, I believe, a little bit more of the lower mids energy, bass energy in the track itself that gives this whole bodied thick sound, but doesn't feel like it's very light and full of clarity in the mids itself. That's just how I feel about the sound itself. Now, that being said, the highs and most instruments that also rely on the highs for the impulse is very clean and distinct. Like the edges, the transient edges on this IEM is really insane. It's like so clean, so precise. Like every instrument is very nice edged. Though I do feel like it may be a little bit too clean on the edge until sometimes I feel that in certain tracks, like in Heartbeat, some of the instruments feel too distinct, which may or may not be a good thing, right? I mean, if you're looking for details, it's a lot of details, but if you're looking for a natural, smooth sound, it feels a little bit too much in the edge itself. So that's really how I feel about the general sound signature. Now, I do feel the highs, depending on the song, have some semblance, like, in Heartbeat, there is some, in Ibarra, there is some, but for many IEMs I tried, usually they do have just a little bit there, but this one just have a little bit more, which dependent on you, because I noticed that different people do hear this semblance differently, and also depend on the tips you use. Now, I'm using the default tips given here, so, I remember hearing some other Jomo and changing the tips to improve it. So today I won't change the tips because it's a first impression, but you get the gist. Probably can change some tips and kind of smooth out the top end itself and reduce the semblance. So I did a very quick comparison with the U12T, and firstly I think that the Jomo Instinct Emerald has a little bit more, I would say, as soundstage. The mid bass is also a little bit more, I would say, as impactful compared to the U12T. Now, when it comes to the bass energy, it depends. Now, if you listen it when they are equivalent in terms of its mids, which is the vocals type of volume, then I would say as the Jomo does feel a little bit significantly more bassy. But if you're listening on a very comfortable level, then I would say as it feels like the Jomo mids are a little bit more behind. However, the bass energy is more similar in those regards. Because, when you listen to music, you will actually tweak it to a comfortable volume rather than tweak it to, like, say, 1 kilohertz at whatever dB, right? You probably don't do that in real life. So when I just push it to natural volume level, I find that the bass is quite similar. This is not like Maestro SE or Scarlett, which has a whole tons of bass. But this one is more like the Jomo and the U12T don't seem to have much different, except the Jomo mid bass is a little bit cleaner and tighter, while the mids itself, I would say, as the Jomo does push the mids a bit behind, while the U12T just feels a little bit more upfront in the mids and a bit clearer in the mids itself. Now, if you push the volume loud enough, I would say as the clarity feels about the same, but if you hear it on a natural way, I would say as the U12T does feel a little bit clearer in the mids region. But that said, when it comes to the instrument, when I say clarity, a lot of time it's about the mix, about the vocals all together and all the smaller instruments, right? But when you look at individual instruments, I find that the Jomo do have a very clean edge to them. It makes it very distinct when it comes to certain instruments like the guitar, the piano. It's very, very distinct when you listen it through the Jomo itself, while through the U12T it feels a bit more smoothed out. Personal preference here, and it does give the Jomo a little bit more perceived details if you ask me. Now, I do think that, in terms of technicality, I do feel like the Jomo is a bit more technical, while the U12T doesn't feel as technical really. But other than that, I don't think that there is a really, really, really huge difference between them, and it all boils down to preference between you choosing the Jomo, the Instinct Emerald, or the U12T. And that's really it for the comparison. Now I will do some measurements before I come back and then do a closing remark on this IEM. So I did some measurements with the Jomo Instinct Emerald, and the measurements are kind of representative of what I talked about just now. Firstly, when it comes to bass, it does have a lot of bass energy. Take a look at this chart. I think the only few IEMs that has more bass energy than it is like FatFreq itself. It's a lot of bass energy there. And the difference between FatFreq and this is that FatFreq continues to extend upwards into the sub-bass region, while this one actually curves in a little bit. So the mid-bass is very nice and impactful, but it doesn't have unlimited sub-bass in this particular IEM. And then when it comes to the mids itself, as I said, just now it was a bit thick, a little bit more like bass and lower mids. It's kind of showing here where it actually goes more inside the frequency of the mids itself, because the bottom of the curve is like 600 hertz, so there is still quite a bit of bass energy and low mid energy in the frequency until then, which gives it a bit of a thicker sound, right? And then I did say that there's a very peaky sound that sometimes have sibilance, and that is in the 6000 region. You can see the spike there in the measurement itself. So it's quite interesting. I mean, so far at least what I've heard out of it, it kind of represents what I think the IEM do sound. And it also makes the instrument, like the edges, very clean, because usually you boost that region, that treble region of a few thousand hertz, and then you get the sound of a very clean edge to the instrument itself. So I just want to summarize that this is a IEM with a lot of bass energy and with a particular spike in the higher mids and treble region that gives it a very clean and clear edge for instruments, though it does sometimes may introduce a little bit of sibilance itself. And also the mids are a little bit more thicker sounding because of more lower energy, and depending on which IEM you compare to, it may sound a little bit more further behind. But other than that, I think it's a very enjoyable IEM. At least I can't find any significant fault. Frequency response is one thing. I really don't find any fault when I actually listen to this IEM, other than the occasional sibilance, and even then I believe that changing tips can just solve the problem for it. So overall, I do think that this is a very nice sounding IEM. You should try it if you like a lot of bass energy. It is a very different take to what you get in the Maestro. Maestro is like very clean and clear mid still, because there's not as much bass energy going into the mids itself, and the mids do flatten out very quickly, like 200 hertz or something. This one goes all the way like 400-500 hertz, 600 hertz before it bottoms up. So this is a very different take on what it means to be high bass energy, and it is a nice alternative that you can try. It's still a very clean and responsive IEM, which is the important part, and I think that if you like this sound signature, I think this is relatively unique. I went to look through all my other frequency response just now. I don't think there's any IEM that are close to this type of sound signature, so something to take note. If you love this, you may be actually in for a real treat. And that's about it for today. For the first look, this is the Jomo Instinct Emerald Green, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Once again, I want to thank Jaben for loaning me this copy. Do visit them at Adelphi.